Hi guys, thank you very much for joining me. My name is Tom and I'm the Tech Chap, and this is my review of the Samsung Galaxy Tab S2 8.0. This is an incredibly thin and light Android tablet. In fact, it's the thinnest and lightest tablet you can buy at all anywhere in the world on the market. It's even thinner and lighter than the iPad Mini 4, which means it's incredibly nice to hold and use. You can barely feel it in your hand, and it's one of the nicest tablets I've ever used. So the S2 is the latest tablet from Samsung, and this is basically the sequel to last year's Samsung Galaxy Tab S 8.4. This also has a bigger brother in the form of the new S2 9.7, but this is the smaller one, and because of that, this is the thinnest and the lightest tablet in the whole world, basically. As well as being thin and light, it has a beautiful 8-inch, really high resolution Super AMOLED display, which is one of the nicest, if not the nicest display I've ever seen on a tablet, and very much goes against the iPad in terms of quality, the colors, the brightness, the sharpness. It's a fantastic display, and everything from Netflix to web browsing to Kindle books and apps look really, really great on this. Out of the box, this runs Android 5.0.2 Lollipop, so unfortunately it's not the latest Marshmallow. We also don't have the latest or even the newest hardware inside. This is running at the Exynos 5433 chip from Samsung, which isn't even as fast or as new as what's available in the Galaxy S6 or Note 5, which is a bit of a shame. It really isn't the top-end internal hardware here, but we also do get 3 gigs of RAM to go along with it, and 32 gigabytes of built-in storage and micro SD support. So storage is very good, and although we don't have the latest software or even hardware, actually it's very, very fast and nice to use, and I'll go a little bit more into that when we talk about the performance. So how does the S2 look and feel? Well, in one word, it's futuristic. The S2 is so thin and so light, it's exactly how tablets should be. You can just be immersed in whatever you're doing, whether you're reading a book, watching a film, a movie, playing a game. You forget about holding it. It's incredibly comfortable thanks to the rounded corners, the lightweight, the thinness. It sits in your hand perfectly, and the 4:3 aspect ratio basically means it feels like you're holding a bit of A5 paper. It's really comfortable and great to use. You can just lose yourself in whatever you're doing, and you don't even notice you're holding a tablet. But as well as being thin, it's also very comfortable to hold. As I say, the rounded corners sit nicely in your hand. The soft plastic back has a very subtle, very soft rubbery texture to it. You can have a good grip on it with one hand. It doesn't feel like it's going to fall out your hand like an iPad with its smooth metallic surface. So it really is comfortable to hold one-handed, although of course it's still a tablet. You're still going to need 2 hands to actually use it, but holding it, enjoying video, enjoying movies is a great experience, landscape or portrait, with just one hand. In terms of the design and the style, I think this looks a lot nicer than last year's Tab S 8.4 and 10.5, which had a frankly horrible dimpled back on it. I reviewed that a few months back, and although it was still a very thin and very light and very nice tablet overall, generally the design on the back, which was very similar to the Galaxy S5 at the time, the dimpled rear cover was basically horrible, I thought. It looked really cheap and tacky. This, much more understated, much more premium as a result, and although it is still plastic, and because of that it is very lightweight, it's not quite as premium, say, as the iPad with its metal back, but the benefit is it's lighter, it's grippier, and nicer to hold, and it's definitely still a big step up over last year's one. So while as we go into this in a bit more detail, I'll show you that this isn't a huge step up from last year's models in terms of the look, the design. That's one of the biggest improvements to this year's S2. So if we look around the tablet, on the bottom we have a home button. This has a built-in fingerprint reader. It's the same one as featured in the Galaxy S6 and also the Note 5. It's not the slightly rubbish one which was in the Galaxy S5 last year. The home button is flanked by 2 capacitive buttons. We have a return and a multitasking app switching button, which is good to see on the bezel, so it's not taking up any screen real estate with the on-screen buttons, which most tablets and Android phones do have. On the back we have an 8 megapixel camera, which does protrude. It is proud of the device, so you maybe have to be a little bit more careful of slamming this down on its back on a desk or whatever. You might want to put a case on it to protect that, but it only does jut out just a tiny bit, but you still have to be careful not to scratch that lens. It also has a 2.1 megapixel camera on the front, and as I say, there's a card for micro SD support. There's also a SIM card slot if you buy the LTE version, which is a little bit more expensive. So overall, I would say the S2 is a great looking tablet. It's ridiculously thin and light. You're really going to have to go and pick one up for yourself. You'll think that the battery's missing or they've left something out because it's so thin and light. It's really unbelievable. It's fantastic for that reason alone, but it also looks great. I think the 74% screen to body ratio means it's really compact. It means you get really thin bezels. The soft plastic rubbery back, it looks premium. I think it looks nice. It's still grippy and feels good. It still has the 2 connectors here, which is for Samsung's proprietary, if I can say it, cover for the device. I haven't actually got that with me, but that's what that's for. In terms of the display, we have a 2048 by 1538 resolution, which gives it a pixel per inch density of 320, which is actually a little bit lower than the one from last year. The Galaxy Tab S8.4 from last year was nearer 360 ppi, slightly high resolution. So although actually this is a little bit less sharp, it is still very impressive, and for a tablet it looks just as crystal clear and sharp as you'd want. You really can't notice that difference, and I would wager no one could really tell the difference between 320 and 360 ppi. It's just technical differences. In reality, this still looks incredible, and basically that's down to the sAMOLED display. Samsung's been using this for years, and since the Galaxy S6 and last year's Tab series, the sAMOLED displays have been one of the best. They've been widely praised for one of the most technically accurate in terms of color reproduction, but also just brightness, viewing angles, color, vibrancy. Generally the best, one of the best, if not the best display you can get on a tablet. So what's it like to use? Well, of course this is an Android tablet, so it's not quite as refined or more an optimized experience as an iOS iPad. But there are associated pros and cons with Android tablets, of course, as well. Better file management, more customization, but we'll go into that a little bit later. Generally, though, performance for a Android 5 Lollipop device, something running TouchWiz, and even something that's not even running the latest hardware, although it is still an octa-core processor, is actually very impressive. So as you can see, the performance is very good, and actually the sound quality as well from the two speakers on the bottom edge of the device is also pretty reasonable, although you can quite easily muffle them with your hand when you're holding it in landscape mode. So Samsung's TouchWiz software, which is infamously a little bit slow, a little bit of a system hog, actually is surprisingly good here. It would be great to see Android Marshmallow, but I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon. These tablets from Samsung don't tend to be updated that quickly, which is a shame. But generally, Android 5.0.2 Lollipop and the latest TouchWiz is still pretty good on this. For example, if you swipe left, you get Flipboard, which is a nice feature. If you hold the home button, you get Google Now. And if you hold the app multitasking button, you do get access to the split view multitasking, where you can open up to two apps side by side, and you can change the ratio of both apps. So pretty standard, as I say. It does still run nice and fast. The issues with TouchWiz aren't quite as severe as they used to be. This is a lot better, and thanks to the slightly faster hardware this generation, also the 3 GB of RAM, you don't really notice the slowdowns as much as you used to. It is definitely an improvement. So if you're worried about the fact that this is a Samsung device, this is a TouchWiz device, and therefore is it going to be really slow and laggy, I wouldn't worry about that. It's not. It is actually very fast. You can get into apps quickly, and generally it's quite impressive. It's not the fastest. You will find iPads load games faster and perhaps have slightly higher frame rates, but generally for 95% of the time this is just as fast as you need and very, very impressive. So what's the camera like? Well, on the back we have an 8 megapixel camera, and on the front a 2.1 megapixel. Overall, they're pretty good. In well-lit environments, the cameras produce nice, good-looking photos. There's a good amount of detail and colors look nice. I'd say it's similar to the iPad in terms of quality and superior to last year's Galaxy Tab. In fact, better than most Android tablets. It is one of the best cameras you can get on an Android tablet, but that's not necessarily saying a lot. As soon as you get into lower light conditions, even though this has a very wide f1.9 aperture, it doesn't do very well in low light. There's lots of noise, colors a bit dull and muted, and generally it's not at all good using it in darker conditions. In terms of video, you can record at either 1080p 30 or up to Quad HD, that's 1440p 30. There's no optical image stabilization, so video is a bit shaky and again suffers a lot from noise, especially in darkened conditions. But in well-lit environments in the daytime, it does look quite nice and is actually one of the best cameras for video on an Android tablet. Overall, the front and rear cameras are pretty good. I'd say they are one of the best you can get on a tablet, and definitely do compete with the iPad for quality. In terms of battery life, unfortunately, it is a bit disappointing. Inside, we have a 4,000 mAh non-removable battery, which I think has been compromised a little bit in order to get the 5.6mm thickness. There are, however, good and bad points. On the one hand, the sAMOLED display, which is excellent in pretty much every regard, is also very excellent when it comes to battery life. It's very efficient. It doesn't drain the battery that much at all, which means this lasts quite a long time watching videos and movies. However, generally used playing games, web browsing, the battery is much poorer, and unfortunately is below average generally, and is far behind the iPad in terms of longevity. Unfortunately, there's also no fast or wireless charging to go with it to mitigate that. It takes about 4.5 hours to charge from 0 to 100%, so pretty long times to charge as well. So batteries really is one of the main issues here. It's a shame that where everything else is pretty excellent, the battery is basically average to a bit poor, and it's a shame. And I think I would, and most of us would, go for a slightly thicker device if it can accommodate a bigger, higher capacity battery and get a few extra hours out of it. So I think the Tab S2 is the best Android tablet you can buy. It's certainly the best tablet from Samsung, although there is strong competition from their Samsung Galaxy Note Pro series, and also Sony's Xperia Z3 and Z4 tablets. But again, they are 16:9 aspect ratios, and this being 4:3, I think is a lot more comfortable to use. It's especially one-handed. It's better for web browsing, better for gaming, I'd say, and better for just holding and using generally, although you will get letterboxing a little bit when you're using watching videos and movies. But generally, I would say, thanks to its ridiculous form factor, it's so light, so thin, you're going to have to go and try one of these out for yourselves. This is the best Android tablet you can buy, and I would highly recommend it to you. If you prefer a larger device, you can get the 9.7-inch larger size one of these. It has the same resolution, which means actually it's not quite as sharp, but does have a slightly bigger battery and slightly more capable camera, so you're going to have to weigh that up, which you prefer. So this is pretty close, I'd say, to the perfect tablet. What would make it a perfect tablet? Probably having the latest Android 6 Marshmallow, which this probably will eventually get, but not for quite some time. They're usually a bit slow to update these. And also having the slightly faster, more powerful, more efficient chip, like the Samsung Galaxy S6 or soon to be released S7, with its more powerful Exynos processors. So it's pretty close, to be fair. And also, of course, the battery. I wouldn't mind adding an extra mil or two on it if I can have a higher capacity battery and get a few more hours. That would be very useful. The other final question would be, if you have one of the Galaxy Tab S8.4s from last year, is this worth an upgrade? No, I wouldn't say it is. This does look nicer. Here's a slightly nicer screen. It's a bit faster. It is, of course, a bit newer and has a slightly more recent software. But no, it's not worth an upgrade. This does, as I say, look a lot nicer. But day to day, the last year's one is pretty close to this. So it will not. I don't think it would be worth that upgrade. But if you haven't got a tablet, or if you've got an older tablet than last year's one, I would highly recommend this. And if you are interested in buying one, you can check out my links to get one of these in the description below. So this has been my review of the new Galaxy Tab S2 8.0 from Samsung. Thank you very much for watching and joining me. Please do like and subscribe, and let me know what you think of this in the comments.